It is 10:30 Eastern, which means that we get to travel to an entirely different time zone. And we get to find out what is going on in the mind of Marion Crowder. Because Marion has one of the largest resumes known to mankind. Literally, she's like doing 9 things at once. She's all over the place. She's in the real world. And that's kind of what keeps her from being with the show occasionally, so that the real world intervenes. Damn real world. Then you've got all of her soccer stuff, USL Super League. There's some stuff going on there. There's some stuff going on in the SEC. And so now that means that we go to the Central Time Zone and catch up with
You're a mess. You're a mess. Hey, we're straight from the training ground today. We had high school practice this morning, MRA Patriots.
Mm-hmm.
They just won their first conference game last night. What a time to be alive.
There you go.
So, yeah, melding the minds of the youth and trying to meld it with my own and get my thoughts out in real time. So,
all right. So then let me start this way.
Okay.
What is it like for you to try and coach on one level?
Mm-hmm.
You're announcing on another level.
Mm-hmm.
The real world is intervening on other levels. How do you keep your life straight, Marion Crowder?
Honestly, if anybody's looking for tips on time management, don't think too far in the future. Don't dwell on the past at all. Right? Move literally from one thing to the next. One thing that I picked up from my dad in recent years is the last couple of years he has started getting up at like 5, and whether he stays up or not, he gets up and he spends 30 minutes doing something. I will say that's not for me, right? Like that's not for me, but it stressed the importance of like a morning routine. And so for me, like I know some people are like, get up, don't look at your phone, don't look at your email, right? It stresses you out too much. I get more stressed if I don't like first thing in the morning kind of just like go through like my checklist of like any urgent emails, any urgent texts, like any urgent calls that I need to like get sorted out for the day. So I literally will spend 30 minutes doing that. And then I'm like, okay, coffee, let's move on. I've got like my day ahead of me. I'm not thinking about anything but today. And then we move on. But yeah. But like having like a nice schedule. So like coaches calls keep me straight, because if I have like coaches calls on Thursday, I know I've got to get all my film done, by like Tuesday or Wednesday, so we can be prepped. So I just kind of use like little tidbits like that to like help me have like mini deadlines for myself,
Okay, just checking. So you get the big win on the high school side.
Yeah.
So what was it like for you on the sidelines as the clock is rolling down, and you get that first win?
Well, I almost got thrown out of the game because the referee was an absolute idiot. Shocking to everyone that knows me. I know. Yes, I do try to still get myself thrown out of games. Nothing's really changed. But it was honestly the girls have been looking good. We're kind of in that stage, and John, you'll know what I'm talking about. When teams are in like really good form that you really don't want to coach too much. You don't want to be in the picture too much. You don't really want to change the routine or anything. That's kind of like where they're at. So we were actually going to give them off because obviously in high school you're battling like the cheer and the dance and the basketball and all the things. And so a lot of it is rest recovery. We were going to give them this morning off, but then we, my head coach and I looked at each other and was like, there's something to be said for having a routine and kind of having players like when they're in good form, just keep doing the same thing. So we just had them out there today for a nice, light, fun practice. Nothing's too serious right now. For me on the sidelines, actually, it's really helpful because one thing I learned when I started coaching is that from the booth and from the coaching bench, 2 very different views, right? And so like it's actually really neat to like get kind of that coach's view during the week, like be in a collaborative situation, because it just helps me be a better analyst. Because now I'm like, okay, if this were me down on the sidelines and I actually know what that means now. So it's actually really nice to kind of melt the 2 worlds, at least. The real world, not so much. The real world can just get lost, honestly.
Basically, yes. You look at and there is a different perspective, I think, when you say it's like, oh, okay, I know what that individual's going through. It just so happens to
Exactly.
be that other individual's me. And so now you can kind of empathize with yourself
Exactly.
at a different
Exactly.
level. Let's start with Super League
Okay.
and find out what's going on there. Right now, we're in match week 4, heading into it. Right now, off the top, Carolina Ascent doing well.
Yep.
Tampa Bay chasing after them.
Yep.
And then you have the proverbial gaggle of folks. It's a hashtag gaggle because it's Dallas. They've only played 2 matches. They've drawn both. DC Power, they've drawn 2 of 3. That would be the playoff bar as we have it right now because of tiebreakers and math, and we're not going to get into that yet.
Please don't.
Spokane, 2 draws out of the blocks.
Mm-hmm.
Brooklyn has 1 match on the board. Lex has a new stadium, and the walkout was really cool for Lex SC, and then Fort Lauderdale United. From the first 3 match weeks as we head into 4, what are some of your big observations?
From a team who's progressing the steadiest, it's got to be DC. I think that Fred Briant over there, Fred Briant is an up-and-coming mind in the game. I mean, he just stopped playing a handful of years ago. Not even a handful. I mean, like a couple. And he's got this is his first women's side. And so you can tell, right, that there is a learning curve to that. But I've been really impressed with their progressions in each match. At first, from match 1 to match 2, there was a lot of progression from their center back relationship to their holding midfield players. And then from match 2 to match 3, we saw the defensive organization actually lead to a goal scored. And so I think that they're moving in a really nice and steady direction. They've also probably had the least amount of time together of anybody in the Super League. So there's something to be said for that. Carolina Ascent FC, and I'm actually going to be on this game. It's going to be Spokane and Carolina on Sunday at 9 p.m. Eastern. Okay, that's going to be the match of the weekend because Carolina has been good. Don't get me wrong. From like an early principle standpoint, Philip Poole has them playing very, very well. They're very disciplined, extreme fundamental type of team, but they haven't gone on the road yet, and now they're having to go cross country. So we'll see. And I actually think Spokane is going to present some problems for them that they haven't seen quite yet. That's if you're going to tune into any on Peacock, tune into that one. And then, Dallas frustrates me. Dallas is going to frustrate a lot of people, I think, because they're so good. They're so good, John. They play such good soccer. They're flexible in their movement up top. They've got Sam Meza, who just can really be the best midfielder in this league, I think. They've got an absolute smasher at the 6th position in Amber Brooks. I mean, the girl can hit, and she can hit for 90 minutes. I'm talking, we're 2 feet tackles like you're in the stands, right? She is a problem. But they just keep drawing. They just keep drawing. And there is something, Chris Petrocelli, I've talked, loads about him. I know him well. He's not supposed to be their acting head coach. He is their acting head coach, but they're still waiting on Pauline McDonald to get over here and get sorted. So there is, I guess, a little bit of a transitional period that they're still sorting through. But Dallas is a team, if they could just figure out how to close a game, they will be excellent. And maybe this is a team that come the spring season, you're like, oh, that's what you look like. So, but
I find it interesting about a team like DC to start things off.
Yeah.
There were a lot of concerns when everybody's assembling rosters and getting players and everything, and it's like, well, okay, DC, you're trying to change a logo and you're working on your branding and who players are your sign. Literally, I think there were 2 times as many or 2.5 times as many players signed at one point by most of the teams in the league than DC.
Yes, exactly. And the same can be said for Brooklyn.
Yeah.
I mean, look at Brooklyn. They've literally just announced their interim head coach. It was literally probably 6 hours before, 12 hours before their first match. Unclear where they're going to play because, allegedly stadium standards weren't up to par. It's a lot to deal with. And that's why I'm trying to look at this, especially from an analyst perspective, in progressions, right? Like who is progressing from week 1 to week 2 to week 3. Brooklyn, we haven't seen enough of them. I'm going to see them this weekend when they play Tampa. I'll be on that game as well. So that will be – Brooklyn's got a lot of good people coming off the bench. They've got like the Sasha Pickards of the world, absolute stud from Alabama. Isabel Cox, a stud from UNC. So we'll see if they can kind of sort it out, but they're a little bit, behind the table, much like DC was to start the season. The good thing for DC, though, is that they've actually played every single week. And you know this as well as anybody. You can emulate everything you want to in training, in film, but nothing meets game reps. And so that right now is probably my biggest concern for Brooklyn, especially when they're having to go up against Tampa Bay.
Yeah, and you have a problem at Maimonides where, and let's just go ahead and put it this way.
Yep.
Maimonides is where the Brooklyn Cyclones play.
Mm-hmm.
The home of the Brooklyn Cyclones. And if you've ever been to Coney Island and you've seen the Brooklyn Cyclone Stadium, it is a gorgeous rebuild. It's a great idea. And Maimonides Park, right now, they were leading right up to that first match, and they're like, no, we got problems. We can't do it. And so that adding that kind of chaos to a new club, to a coach that is still under an interim, you have all of these external factors that you're dealing with. If Brooklyn, that's got to drive a player crazy trying to sit there and focus on the task at hand with all this stuff bouncing around them.
And I don't even know which one to argue is the bigger deal, right? As a player, when you're sitting there kind of like, what's the week going to be like? Well, we still don't know who our head coach is. So I don't even know if I'm going to start because I guess they've been, obviously we're not privy to know, like, have they been at training? And I actually haven't gotten to talk to Brooklyn quite yet this week. So there's a lot of questions around when did the interim head coach even get to training, right? Like, how long has she been there? Who's been running training? John, I don't know. Right. And so there is a lot, right? So you think about that as a player, but then you're kind of like, all right, well, when you do things, because I actually I was a huge visualizer, especially after I tore my ACL. I found that in rehab and just latched onto it and loved it. But you need to be able to know where you're playing to be able to visualize the game happening in your head. And that's a thing that I know that maybe seems nuanced, but that's a thing that a ton of attackers, a ton of midfielders will do. They will literally visualize different parts of the game. They'll visualize themselves scoring, the exact spot on the field where they score, who they look up to in the stands. I mean, it can get super detailed, and it's quite a common practice. How do you do that if you don't know where you're going to play?
The 4 matches this weekend, we kind of danced through them a little bit. You mentioned DC. What have you seen from Fort Lauderdale this year as they head to Audi Field Friday night? What sticks out in your mind so far, early returns?
Fort Lauderdale needs to, for lack of a better phrase, get it together in this DC Power matchup. Look, we knew that when they played last weekend, they played Carolina Ascent. We've talked about how fundamental Carolina is. Okay, got it. But Fort Lauderdale, for me, was a regression from week 1 to week 2. And when we look at where they are now, I actually thought that they're playmakers in the middle of the park. I was not expecting so many self-inflicted wounds when they played Carolina. Yes, Carolina's press was good. The defensive organization was good, but there were way too many moments in that game versus Carolina Ascent where they just gave the ball away, right? And when they have, Fort Lauderdale has arguably the most explosive offense from their wing players, from their number 10. And when you can't get the ball to those players, it's basically like the 49ers, like, you don't have Christian McCaffrey. Well, we have our whole offense built around Christian McCaffrey. Well, they have their whole offense built around getting the ball to these wide players in 1v1 situations. When that can't happen because there's self-inflicted wounds in the midfield, that's a problem. And so I knew that Carolina Ascent was going to present Fort Lauderdale with some problems. I did not expect it to be problems building out of the midfield because they've got Felicia Knox. They've got really talented and gifted midfield players. So for me, Fort Lauderdale, I need to see improvement on the ball. Defensively, I actually thought that they were quite good. Don't change anything you're doing defensively, despite the 2 goals given up. I thought the box organization was very, very good. It's really just that build-up portion of it.
All right, so Dallas at 8 o'clock Eastern Friday gets to host Lex. We talked about how frustrating Dallas can be for you. What about Lex? They had the home match there, their first drift into the new stadium, but what about Lex SC heading to Dallas?
I thought they gave up really soft goals on the weekend. I think that when they go together as a team in the press, they're quite good. We saw that in some of their opening matches, but when they there were way too many soft goals. So like the first goal that they gave up, it started from absolute poor defensive pressure from the front runners, and then it's a domino effect down the field. Now an outside back's got to step up where they don't want to. We send a long ball, right? We're in behind. It starts from the front. And then I thought the second goal was a really poor clearance. It was even worse marking in the box on the recycled run. It was just overall so lax when they were trying to press the ball carrier. And for me, it just seemed like at times there were shadow defenders out there for Lexington. Now, huge credit to give yourself a chance to get back in this game. And albeit I would say that the second goal that they gave up was perhaps against the run of play. But for me, what you don't want to see in these early stages is a lack of conviction when you're pressing defensively. Because guess what? You can control that. There's a lot of things that with a new team that you're trying to understand and you kind of have grace and understanding towards. For me, and this comes from not only a player perspective, a coach perspective as well. For me, when I don't see the effort given, when I don't see kind of just that oomph, that bite, when you are trying to press the ball carrier, that's a problem. And that's something that it doesn't take film, right? It doesn't take that. That's just an individual decision. And so I'm actually calling on the players of Lexington to have more conviction, have more bite when they go to press the ball carrier. And I think the domino effect that we saw from their defensive organization solidifies itself once you do that.
You mentioned the matchup on Sunday at One Spokane with Carolina making the long roadie. Tampa Bay has the other match this week.
Mm-hmm.
Saturday night, 7 o'clock. As Brooklyn's coming to town, you talked about the problems with Brooklyn so far. Is this going to be a long night for them, considering everything we talked about?
Tampa Bay is kind of flying under the radar right now, aren't they? They're a team that they've actually performed quite well. They've given up a bit too much, and sometimes that's because they start matches a little too slow. I think it's going to depend entirely on how the Brooklyn FC starting 11 changes. I would make changes to the starting 11 based off how impactful the game changed when the subs for Brooklyn came on, specifically the two I mentioned, Sasha Pickard, Isabel Cox. I thought that they were excellent. I would expect them to start. If the starting lineup is the same, I do think Tampa Bay has the ability to put them out of this one early. So for me, as hard as it is to know what to expect with Brooklyn, I think that they have a really tough task at hand going into Tampa Bay. As you mentioned, we've seen the crowds show up very, very well for Tampa Bay. We've seen a lot of energy around Tampa Bay. If you don't come in and make a statement in the first 20 minutes, I think it could be quite a long night if you're a Brooklyn fan.
Marion Crowder dropping by, as she always does when the real world does not intervene and drop by. Now, how many cups of coffee are we on right now?
This is only my second. I'm really upset about it as well.
Okay. So what's the mug? What's the mug this morning?
We do still have a Starbucks mug, but it's like a fox on it. We don't have like a place. Okay. We have a fox this time, but we have our little Starbucks logo. Add Starbucks, sponsor me.
Yeah. I mean,
Where's yours? Where's yours?
Well, it's right here.
Where's your Mountain Dew or your Pep, whatever?
Right here.
What is okay?
The Gwinnett Stripe.
Love that.
AAA baseball.
Yeah.
So Marion always, for those of you who are looking at Marion for the first time and going, who is this person? Marion has been a friend of the network for a very long time. And it goes back to her time at USL League One. And now, now that she is destroying it on both the coaching level and the USL Super League level and with the SEC soccer, that's why we bring her on, so she can let us know what is what at Marion CC _, on the 280 character app.
Stay out of my mentions, everybody. I get enough angry ones.
No. For speaking your mind and letting everybody know what you think, you get.
Oh yeah, if it's not an angry text from a coach of the game, hey, I watched the game back and don't understand why you didn't agree with XYZ, right? If it's not an angry text like that, there's definitely kind of a. I'm always going to be a homer, apparently, for one specific team. That I get that one quite a bit. I get a lot of angry messages from referees. I've been a ref in this game a long time, and whatever. Neither here nor there.
Before we get into the SEC, you're in the path of Francine. Are you guys going to be okay?
Yeah, apparently it's supposed to be pretty heavy rainfall starting at like 3, but it should be, from everything we see in central Mississippi, for context, everybody, it seems like it should be out of here by, I mean, before evening. So just a couple hours of pretty heavy rainfall. And John, from what I see, because I'm worried about, I'm flying to Florida to call these games for Peacock at Vista, and then I'm flying. I'm strictly Super League this weekend, so I don't have to make an SEC trip anywhere. But I think getting to Florida, I should be okay, because I think it's just going up centrally, right?
Yeah, it's going up centrally. The boss is in Houston, and she has to fly to DC tomorrow. So what I told her was, I said, you're probably going to have to go end around. You're probably going to go around left tackle to get there.
Yeah.
You're going to be swinging wide to get there, and you're going to have a heck of a tailwind when you get around. So, so that's what she's facing, involving all this kind of stuff.
Thinking about her for sure.
Yeah, so we're going to keep an eye on that, and that's why we have like texts and DMs and things. All right, SEC, and this is the other reason that we like to bring you in, because you talk about the league where it just means more, and you've got some teams at the top of the table that are, last time I checked, very good. And they have run the table so far in their regular season. Auburn and Kentucky out of the blocks at 7-0. Texas right now at 6-0-1. That's still weird to say. Texas 6-0-1. Alabama 6-2. Arkansas at 5-0-1. Early returns from what you've seen at the top of the table in the SEC.
Got to talk about Auburn, right? I mean, not where Karen Hoppa and her team wanted to be last year. A very uncharacteristic Auburn performance. And unfortunately for Auburn, last year kind of felt like the culmination of a few years on a downward trajectory, and now it's jumped back up to where it should be. Olivia Woodson, she has been really good from a film perspective. She looks good. Honestly, Auburn looks fit. They look like they returned with kind of this chip on their shoulder, which I love. And they get this huge win over, at the time, number 17, Ohio State. And remind you, this is an Ohio State team that beat Duke to start the season, right? So, I mean, there's definitely a very, very good Ohio State team. It's going to look really good on an NCAA resume. You talked about Kentucky. I mean, Mars Josephson, gets defensive player of the week. Huge win for Kentucky over, at the time, number 9 UCLA. Now, we knew Mars was going to be impactful. Mars has had a stint at UNC Chapel Hill with Anson Dorrance and company. And seeing as Kentucky did a complete overhaul of their roster, I'm talking like 19 new players, the majority of them outfield players, having a consistent presence like a Mars Josephson was going to be really important, especially between the pipes. And I have heard, I'm not going to, and I don't want to take anything away, but I have heard that, from multiple sources that have watched film on UCLA, that they got ranked entirely too high. There should have been more of like a number 25 UCLA team, like going to be toward the bottom of the rankings. Now, I say all that to say it's going to look good from an NCAA perspective for Kentucky that they were ranked so high. My question for Kentucky, though, because we saw this with them last year, is how do you start dealing with these split weekends? And so they open SEC play with a split weekend, Thursday at home versus Florida, and then on the road to South Carolina. That's not going to be this coming weekend, but the weekend after. That will be the biggest test for me. And then Sydney Fuller, Texas A&M. Texas A&M, I guess I'm just having frustrations with all of the Texas teams at this moment, maybe except for the Texas Longhorns. But Sydney Fuller gets Freshman of the Week. Texas A&M, for me, has just been very questionable in these non-conference games. A loss to Denver, a loss to Baylor, like not what you needed when you're looking at a team who's potentially going to be fighting for like a top. We thought coming into this that Texas A&M might fight for a top 6 spot in the conference in the regular season, and I hope they do, because those, if they don't, right, and they're a team that's fighting for that 500 position on the bubble for an NCAA tournament, those 2 losses are really going to hurt you, come back to bite you in the butt. Now, I do think that Texas A&M has an easier introduction into conference play. So they're going to start with Missouri. They're going to start then with Oklahoma, and then they're going to move to Auburn. So not maybe as tough as somebody like a Kentucky.
Yep, you get to ease into your schedule. Right now, the top 25 rankings, according to our friends at United Soccer Coaches, Arkansas up 2-4, Auburn up 7 from 13 to 6 with that 7-0 record. Texas kind of hanging around in the middle right now. They go from 16 to 14. Kentucky ranked at 21 after starting out their season 6-0. South Carolina not ranked, and they're at 25 at 1-0-3 so far. You mentioned UCLA dropping from 9 to 22 with how things are right now with UCLA. So, one question before we get into the matchups this weekend, if there's anything else that you're keeping an eye on. I haven't had the chance to ask you about Anson Dorrance.
Yeah.
And his legacy and his departure and all of these things. It was a shock to the system of the soccer community that Anson was leaving. What do you think about Anson and the gap that's going to be left there in that program?
I think Anson is a brilliant mind, and I mean that in more ways than just soccer, aka when you have a program like what Anson has created, you're literally coaching on the field that is named after you, which in total respect, we don't typically see that until after you're retired or after you're dead. This man is living and he's playing in his own field, in his own stadium, right? So let's understand that. With that, you get to leave on your own terms in programs like these. I don't know. I want to make it clear. I don't know anything, right? I have kept up with things here and there, but I have not had anything confirmed. I do know, obviously, his wife has had cancer a few times, right? Anson's not the youngest guy in the world. There could be a health component to this. I don't know, but I'm just throwing that out there for people to kind of, look at. Right. There's also this idea, right, that he was grooming and he has been grooming Nahas to be the guy. And sometimes when you have someone who you are like, really, they've been who I've been given the program to over these last 5 years, they've been doing more than the administration ever could realize. When you have that, there is some part of you that's like, I'm not letting them take that away from this guy. At least I want him to have the opportunity. Yeah. So there is a part of me, because Anson did a very similar thing with Tony DeCicco when taking over the women's national team, right? He had a late announcement that he was going to step down as the women's national team coach because he wanted Tony DeCicco to have it, and he didn't give the admin any time to get this new hire. And so with that being said, I think perhaps from an outside looking in, this is a similar move for Manson, where he knew it was his time, but he also knew that he had his guy. And instead of maybe looking and saying, hey, in the spring, I'm going to resign, and giving them a whole 6 to 8 months to find someone new, he does it right at the end of the season. So it kind of says, hey, you don't have a choice. This is the guy. And now he's put Nahas in a situation where, all right, I've given you 1 year, prove that you deserve to be here. Right.
Yeah. No doubt. And looking forward to seeing how this chapter plays out up there. Busy weekend, busy day tomorrow, actually, in the conference. Yeah. Let's see. Abilene Christian, Mississippi State, Samford in Georgia, Southern Miss and Ole Miss. That's going to be an interesting one.
Yeah, I agree.
Missouri at Duke. Central Connecticut at Texas A&M. Central Connecticut comes in with a record of 4-2, and Texas A&M at 0-5-1. Hootie Hoo, Kennesaw State down to Florida to take on Gainesville, and the entire northern Florida contingent. Memphis at number 7 goes to Tennessee, and that's going to be an interesting one at Knoxville. South Carolina at 25 hosting Georgetown. Louisiana Monroe, and that's how it is said, Monroe, taking on Oklahoma in Norman. Houston Christian is taking on number 14 Texas. EKU in Vandy, LSU, and the Dons of San Francisco. That's a busy day to start the weekend.
Very, very busy. And I'm looking at these right now, and there's none, obviously, that Georgia, Washington State. Now, Washington State's good, right? Washington State's going to be a team that flies under the radar, gets an NCAA bid, I have to say. So, like, if I had one to pick out that's like, and Georgia's had, like we talked about, Georgia's had a really tough non-conference, that one's going to be a good matchup for sure. Lipscomb at Ole Miss. Look, Ole Miss needs all the help they can get, right? And Lipscomb, again, they're going to be a team that gets an NCAA tournament bid. They have for the majority of the last 10 years. make a statement if you're Ole Miss, win that game, and move into conference play with a lot of confidence under your belt. Now, Florida, FGCU, that's not one to take lightly either. We're talking about Florida, who is running the gauntlet right now of being in-state and having to deal with their in-state rivalries. They just got stomped 3-0 by the reigning national champions in Florida State, and they played very uncharacteristic. Sam Bohan, right? They played a high line, high risk, high reward. Didn't work out. They were positive, though. They had a ton of positives. I was on that game. They have a veteran back line and some really exciting young talent that needs confidence. That is the name of the game right now for these remaining non-conference games, because guess what? Next week, we're hitting it, right? We are hitting it, and it's going to be heavy. And some of these teams, like this is going to be the easiest match you have for the next 2 months. If I am a coach approaching this, and if I'm an analyst approaching this, how can they play to exude some type of confidence? If I'm a coach, I'm coming at this as like, you know what, we're not changing the game plan at all, because the matchups I see, you shouldn't have to. It's not like anybody has a Florida State coming into town. They don't have a UCLA coming into town. They have games that are winnable, played under their own identity. Find what works, be you, and really try to approach this week from a training perspective, not game planning for the other team, right? Make it about you and how you can play your best. So from an analyst perspective, that's how I'm looking at this weekend, teams that are going to come out with confidence. And from a coaching perspective, that's how I'm prepping my team as well.
All right, Coach, what matches are you calling again this weekend?
None on the SEC side. So we actually don't have, for football's sake, we don't have any TV slots on the SEC side. There is an ACC Network primetime matchup this Thursday. That'll be with Jen Hildreth and Lori Lindsay. So if you're looking for some women's soccer, they always call in a terrific game together. But I'll be on Super League. So I've got, and NWSL. I've got NWSL on, Friday, and then Super League Saturday, Sunday.
See, now I didn't know you were doing NWSL games. That's another topic entirely that we have to talk about when you come on.
Yeah. we're just, hey, wherever we're needed, John, wherever we're needed, we go.
Well, yeah, that's the wandering minstrels that we are when we do television.
Yeah.
So
and eventually we'll get back into the USL Championship landscape as well when they start getting into playoffs and all the things. So
I mean, see, now that's another thing. So we got to talk USL Championship with you with all the chaos. See, I've got to go more rapid fire. I didn't realize that I've opened a door here.
No, don't
talk NWSL and USL Championship with you.
Not right now. Right now we're Super League and we're SEC and all the things. I do have an ACC now. Next week I have a split weekend. Oh. So next week I am on SEC Thursday primetime. It'll be Missouri and someone Texas A&M maybe. I can't remember. It'll be someone. I just know I'm going to Columbia. So whoever's playing, I'll be there in Columbia, and then I'm on ACC Network on Sunday, calling an SMU game. So
hang on, I'm getting there. I got the schedule.
You got the schedule? Let me know who I should prep for. Not that I prepped this far in advance, but
Texas A&M.
There we go. Yeah. Okay. So I thought
Texas A&M next Thursday, 8:00 Eastern. Texas A&M currently 4-2. Missouri currently 2-3-1. Sydney Becerra and Milena Fisher, your leading goal scorers at the moment. Yeah. So
it'll actually be a good game because those are Stephanie Golan at Missouri, super chess match oriented kind of coach. Obviously, we know what he's capable of. He's going to move some pieces around. So from a coaching tactical perspective, that'll be a really interesting matchup for sure.
All right. So then when we reconvene next week, if the real world doesn't get in the way, then we'll talk about that stuff as well. Marion, as always, go get your coffee. Be safe. Stay dry, and we'll catch up with you next time.
Yeah. Y'all be safe too. Bye, John.
Bye. That's Marion, and she's busy as hell.